Welcome to Bloodbath and Beyond. Today we review Scare Package. 7 directors, 7 tales of terror, 0 working cell phones.
Scare Package has way too many directors and actors and just people involved that I'm not going to cover that right now, so we're just going to go on to the synopsis. This is a horror anthology based around an old video store run by Chad. It's called Rad Chads. He hires a new employee and both him and one of his regulars talk about different horror movies, and those are the shorts that we see. This is going to be a weird review simply because horror anthologies are impossible to review properly because you can't touch on everything. So we're going to loosely cover parts that we like. And while there might be some minor spoilers, we're going to try and make sure that we don't do all the big reveals in this video. So what do we like?
I enjoyed the wrapper. I really enjoyed the cold open and the characters in that film because it started the film off right. It just had it on such a good high note that I was ready to enjoy the ride. It was very self-aware and that was my favorite one. Mike was hilarious. Everything he did, it brought a smile to my face.
I even have a backstory. Mike, concerned neighbor.
Yeah, it definitely sets the pace because it is very meta. So when you think of movies like Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon, it's got very similar vibes to that. As the shorts go on, that's one commonality is things seem to be pretty self-aware. There's a lot of fourth wall breaking. There's a lot of nods to horror in general. And another common thing is definitely the production value and the special effects. All of these shorts are quality, from the cinematography, the way that everything looks. I mean, they all have their own different styles because we have different directors, of course, but it feels consistent and everything feels like it belongs in the same kind of world.
That's what's kind of cool about it. We have the cold open, and then when we're finishing off with the last part of the wrapper, it goes full circle because you have characters who are kind of crossing over in each story, creating that transition to smooth the storytelling out. And I really liked it.
One of the big reasons that we watched this was because it was on the last drive-in, and it features Joe Bob.
I actually saw my first set of boobs on your show.
And even Rad Chad, he's got his bolo tie, he's got his shirt with the little pockets. You can tell he's a Joe Bob fan.
Isn't he the coolest?
And even his signage is the last drive-in. But I came late to that, and I only caught the very end. And you see Dustin Rhodes. Obviously, most people would know him as Gold Dust, or now Dustin, as part of the Natural Nightmares over on AEW. But it had crazy practical effects. I'm like, holy shit, we need to watch this. And I'm happy we did. I mean, it got a lot of buzz when it first came out because it is on Shudder, and Shudder originals have been pretty consistently good. And this followed suit. I really liked the practical effects. There's blood all over the place. There's people getting stabbed in the head with their own broken off arm. People are getting beaten with their own legs.
But I think the standout practical effect has to go to the
melting guy?
The melting guy.
He's changing, not melting.
Shut up, what do you know?
I don't know what's better, the fact that he looks great or the conversations he's having with the characters. The interaction is absolutely hilarious.
Look at me, come on, do I look like somebody that's gonna hurt you? People say I have kind eyes.
And there are definitely some massive laugh out loud moments in this. Probably one of the funniest scenes I've seen in 10 years. So to set this up, the backstory for the Devil's Lake Impaler, played by Dustin Rhodes, it's rumored that he had donated his lungs or some body parts to a kid who is dying of cancer.
You can't donate both your lungs.
Alright, well, he saved him or whatever.
And so our final boy here.
Does this make me final boy?
Shows up with his shaved head.
Hey, Damon! It's me! Jimmy! Don't you remember me?
You kind of knew it was coming because he made the reference to Friday 4, but you don't know what the exact punchline is going to be. But I love the little flashback montage of Dustin just pushing him on the swing.
Pushing little Jimmy, having a blast with little Jimmy.
That was the best part of this film.
I really liked our interactions with Chad and Han. Han is the new hire at the video store. He's training his new employee, and this high and mighty vibe that he gives off is just hilarious, especially knowing that Han doesn't really give a shit about him. Their back and forth was great. Now, what didn't we like? There's something weird with the pacing in this. It's not necessarily a long movie, but it feels like it goes on forever. And it's very likely because there's so many stories going on, 7. You're introduced to so many different people and situations, and they all feel like they're longer than they actually are. So at like 1 hour and 22 minutes, I paused to get a drink, and we're like, whoa, it hasn't been 2 hours? It felt like it was 2 hours by then.
I'd like to rent a wood chipper.
Something can be said about the specific shorts here. I don't want to center any of them out, but there is one or two that I would have been okay if they weren't included in this film. It probably would have trimmed off about 20 minutes.
I have no issue naming those shorts. The Candy Sucker one, the Fog one.
Oh, and the Mister, like it looked good, but it didn't feel like it was like a part of all of these stories. The Fog one as well just kind of seemed thrown together. Like it was like, I got a gag about spoilers, so let's make a short about it.
There are aspects of all of these that I'm sure people love, but those three specifically felt out of place.
Nothing against the Fog one, because I actually enjoyed the combat scene in that one, but why am I seeing this epic old school fight scene in a horror anthology when everything else is like camp slasher or like Halloween home invasion style? It just felt out of place. That one wasn't bad, it just didn't belong in this style.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. It's like they could have been in a different anthology and probably worked better and not thrown off the pacing as much.
Yeah, this is bad.
Also, given all the practical effects that we saw, the orange skulls in the sucker one did come off pretty weak.
So while I did say that there was a lot of consistency across the board, and I think that is true for most of it, those definitely were just like masks. You could see them not attached to the characters' faces, and they just looked weird. I also didn't really get it either. Do they like slowly turn into actual suckers and then they're sold in stores?
Like the sucker and you become a killer?
But where'd that sucker come from?
Well, that's the thing that's dumb about that. If it's not for sale, why is it advertised front and center in a store? You put that behind the counter.
They never put the standees at video stores behind the counter because they look cool. You want them front and center.
Someone trying to steal a standee is pretty evident.
I used to work at EV Games, and somebody tried to take one of the Madden ones while I was there. I'm like, hey, what are you doing? It was the weirdest thing, like walking out with like a full-sized man. Like, dude, I can see you. Stop it.
So like a sucker, you could just be like, grab and tuck under your...
Which we've seen. That's what happened. Now it's time for final thoughts and ratings. Scare Package was an excellent anthology. It set the pace as a cool meta horror right out the gate with enjoyable characters, self-aware comedy, and some great acting. And not to mention the production value. All of these concepts were carried throughout the movie, and we had a pretty solid package altogether. Unfortunately, there were a couple shorts that I wasn't really a fan of, but it's not as if I didn't like them, it's that I didn't feel that they fit with everything else. I really enjoyed the practical effects, and of course seeing Bob Briggs and Dustin Rhodes in a horror movie is pretty cool. I would definitely recommend this one, so I'm gonna give this 4 low 5s out of 5.
We'll just stick with low 5s for now.
I had a really good time watching Scare Package. I enjoy anthologies, and I was really excited to watch this one because it just seemed like it was going to be a fun time, and it did not let me down. Even though the pacing made it feel longer than what it actually was, I wasn't necessarily bored. I just felt like some things did drag on. We could have removed 1 or 2 short stories and you wouldn't have missed a beat. I absolutely loved the cold open and would love to see a few of these have their own feature films. But the standout in this film has to be the practical effects. I just loved all the kills and the slime monster. Words can't describe how good it is. You just need to go out and watch this. So with that being said, I'm gonna give this film 4 possessing dolls for dummies out of 5.
As always, thank you for watching. Like this video and comment below with your thoughts on the film if you've seen it. If you haven't and you do want to check it out, links are in the description. And if this is your first time here, make sure you subscribe to the channel, stay up to date with everything Bloodbath and beyond.